piece of code, right? The piece of code, whatever is being developed by the attacker, it will try to create some harmness to the system. Okay, so what will happen now? They will try to write some piece of code, and that piece of code will come onto our system, and inside our system, whatever files we have, for all those files, it will try to append or add virus code also as part of that application. So I'll just explain one example. So let us say I am using Microsoft Word. So that is a program or software or application, right? So now there is some virus attack happened on the system, and now what it will do, that application is nothing but it is also a program. So this virus code will be attached to that Microsoft Word program. So what will happen when we attach virus code as part of the Microsoft Word program? Whenever you open any document, what will happen? Microsoft Word application will start. So whenever that application is started, immediately with the original code of application, virus code also will get executed, right? So every time when you open a document using Microsoft Word, every time the virus code also will get executed, right? So no need to separately execute the virus. It will automatically attach itself to the existing critical files in the system. So automatically, whenever you open that critical applications or files, virus code also will get executed, right? Like that, they will try to use our system resources to execute. Okay, so the virus behavior is like that. And worm is majorly targeting the vulnerabilities in the network. So let us say one system of our enterprise LAN is compromised and attacked with the worm. What the worm will do, immediately it will try to analyze the network, and if it is connected to a LAN, it will try to identify is there any other systems present in the LAN network. If there are other systems in the LAN, through the LAN network, it will try to propagate into other systems also, right? So virus is nothing but within the system, it will try to attach itself to the existing files and it will get executed. Worm is not like that. It will try to exploit the vulnerabilities in the network, and it will try to penetrate through the network to all the connected systems. That is the significant, that is the behavior of worm. And next comes the logic bomb. So as the name itself signifies or indicates, it is a programmatical bomb based on a conditional logic. So a conditional logic will be written in the program, inside the program itself. That means application program. So in our example, if we take Microsoft Word, inside the Microsoft Word application, there will be a piece of code written, and as part of the piece of code, this logic bomb is inserted. So what it will do is like whenever there is a condition met, like if the time reaches December 31st, if the date reaches December 31st, 11:59, now I want to do some operation, right? So that is the logic I am writing. If some condition meets, I would like to perform this bomb operation. So that bomb is nothing but it will try to exploit something in your system, or steal something in your system, or do some harmness to your system. So it is not physical bomb. It is like some kind of malware based on the conditional logic. Okay. So this will get triggered only when the given condition is met, right? And next one is the backdoor. As the name itself indicates, generally if we want to enter into any of the system or device or any software, we'll be having a username, password, right? Some secret information. So that is through for actual genuine door. You are entering using a genuine credentials. That is the normal entry point. But if you don't know the normal entry point or secret information, but still if you want to enter into the system or the device or anywhere, you want some backdoor, right? So it is similar to our some of the people will discuss like I have given some amount to the company people, and in background or backdoor, through backdoor, I have entered into the company. The front door is through proper interview channel and all. The back door is without having any interview channel, by giving some payment or donation kind of thing to the company, they have entered into the employment. Right? Similarly, here also, by knowing the secret information, we need to enter into the device, but without knowing that, using this back door, I am getting the control of the device. Right? So there are so many types of backdoors are available. So you can you might have remember that the NSA has planted backdoors in all the routers in the US, right? Why? Because they want to just monitor what is the communication going in the country. So if there is something like terrorist communication and all, they will be able to monitor through these backdoors, and they will be able to take appropriate actions. That is for the genuine use, security measures. But just assume if the same backdoor is planted in our device by an attacker. Now what will happen? Now attacker can see all the communication whichever is going from the router or any device, and he can get access to our sensitive information. If we take the example of a router, inside a router, Wi-Fi router, if the backdoor is implanted by an attacker, now using that Wi-Fi, if you are opening your bank account, that account details will be known to the attacker. In which bank account you have the, in which bank you have the account, that information also known to the attacker, right? So now he will take appropriate actions to collect your personal information from the social networking sites, like what is your marriage anniversary date, your kid's birthday, what is their name, or your wife name, like that. All this information will be utilized to guess your password, right? So if he knows the account information and the password, he can immediately get access to your account and he can steal your money. Okay, so backdoors are very, very dangerous with respect to these monitoring activities. And next, coming to the Trojan horse, this is like it will be spoofing the existing genuine process. In our system, we might be having something like Internet Explorer, that is a browser. When a Trojan has entered into my system, it will try to replace that Internet Explorer program with Trojan's code, right? So whenever that program is being run, you will see that as Internet Explorer, but actually in background, it will be running some malicious operations, right? So it is a deceptive program that spoofs a harmful or useful program, but actually stores other malware. And the next one comes to spyware. So it is the software used to spy on the victim's activities and also use it to steal some sensitive information. So it will be not causing any harm to your system. It will simply sit on your system and it will be keep on spying on your activities. And the spied information will be silently sent to the attacker. Now attacker will analyze that spied activities, and based on that he will take some action, right? And the next one is rootkit. So rootkit is basically the applicable with respect to the operating system, right? So it will try to replace some of the programs of operating system, and it will try to hide the logs of that replacements. Okay, so entire operating system also it can replace with rootkit enabled operating system. It is also very much dangerous. And the next one is bot or botnet. So this bot is nothing but some attackers, what they will do is they will try to compromise the vulnerable systems in the internet, and they don't want to do any harmness to the computer. They just want to utilize your system resources for performing another activity. Only they will be using your resources, but they won't create any harmness to your system, right? So that is nothing but a bot. It is a kind of zombie. Whatever attacker says, it executes, but it does not have any malware in it. It does not have any harmful functions in it, right? So that is a bot, or we can call it as zombie. Like that, a set of bots will be connected over the internet, which is known as botnet. Not a single system, multiple compromised systems are combined together in the internet to build a botnet. So this botnet will be utilized to attack some other website. So assume that denial of service or distributed denial of service, if you heard about them. Now let us say I have some grudge on one of the website. So let us assume I don't want IRCTC website to work for some time because I did not get the Tatkal ticket, so I have some grudge on it. Now I don't want that site to work for some time. What I will do, I will use this botnet and I will continuously send the request, any request, login request or any request to the IRCTC server. What will happen? This server will be filled up with all the junk requests which I am sending from the botnet, but those are not genuine requests, right? So every server will be having some kind of maximum load it can handle. So our entire load is being taken by this botnet, but not by the genuine users. At that time, if any genuine user comes to access IRCTC website, it will reject it. Why? Because every server will be given some maximum number of connections to the server. So assume that that is 500. Now using this botnet, if I send 1000 requests, it will not be able to service my request itself. If a genuine user comes, 1001, it will not accept that 1001 request at all. So normal users will not be able to utilize the server's resources or server's software. I am just creating a havoc to the system, right? That is the significance of this bot or botnet. So these are the major types of malware we have in the market and their behaviors. Now we'll see one ransomware attack where some kind of redirections happening and obfuscations they are doing and all. So before going to that, I would like to explain you what are the effects of compromising a system. Right. So before that, how the Trojan horse will be entering into our system? It is through pirated or cracked software. Many of the times we don't want to purchase any license of the softwares. We would like to have some cracked software. What will happen? That cracked software will be available in some third-party websites where that third-party owner, what they'll do, they will try to package that software with a Trojan horse or any other malware. What will happen now when you download that cracked software or pirated software, immediately the corresponding application will be installed in your system. Parallelly, the Trojan horse also will get installed in your system, right? So majority of the times these Trojan horse or backdoor, these kind of things will come from pirated or cracked softwares. Right? And whenever we have this backdoor or Trojan, this will give the access to your system remotely to the attackers or hackers. And if he has the remote access, that means that the hacker is sitting at your keyboard. He can type anything and he can send the command remotely to your system and he can do anything. Okay. So these are all some risks of being compromised or infected. Whenever your system is compromised or infected, these are the possible operations that attacker can do using your system. So first thing is, hackers would try to use your system and internet connection or system resources, right? So to send some spam messages or emails, and a majority of spam is generated by the infected systems. Now, previously we discussed about bot and botnet. Now, what attackers will do? They will try to generate some spam emails from that bot systems, and that will be sent to the companies and some email IDs. Whenever this cyber police or any other people has reverse tracked from where it has come and all, it will show the bot system, but not the attacker system, right? Because it is originated from bot system which is compromised by the attacker. Now they will catch that bot system owner, but not the attacker. Right? That is the advantage they will get. So they will try to utilize your system resources as well as internet connection to send some spam. And your passwords can be stolen in addition to other private information stored on your computer, such as credit card numbers, your address, phone number. These can be used for stealing your identity, which may cause some financial fraud. Right? Sorry. So this is possible through this what you call backdoor or remote shell. Using all these operations, they can try to peep on your activities or monitoring your activities, and they can install a spyware also, which will be continuously spying on your activities and sending the information to the attacker. All these things will lead to your identity theft or financial fraud, right? And hackers can log your activity, read emails, view and download contents of documents, pictures, videos, and other any private data available in the system. And they could use your computer and internet connection in conjunction with other systems to launch distributed denial of service attacks. Right? This is through botnet. And they could even modify the system files, disable your antivirus, delete any other sensitive files, and change the system settings. So here one example I'll give you. Change the system settings. What it will do is it will try to modify your network connections to set up a proxy, right? So generally the proxy is like if you are working under a organization, you will be having a central proxy to where you are connecting, and from that proxy it will be communicating to the outside of enterprise. Similarly, now in our home mission, the attacker will try to change the network settings, and he will keep the proxy server as his own attacker server. What will happen now? Whatever you are browsing in your system, all those information will be sent to the attacker. Now attacker will be taking a call whether that information needs to be sent to the actual website or it needs to be blocked. Okay, so he is trying to intercept our traffic, whatever we are generating from our system, and he is monitoring our traffic and taking a decision whether to send this to the actual server or not. So these kind of settings they can do, modify the settings. Now comes to this ransomware attack. So all of us might have heard about this ransomware attack where entire systems files get encrypted, and they will ask you for some ransom to pay to get the decryption key. Okay, so how they are getting access to your system and how they are encrypting, all these things are not known to us. So I'll just explain briefly how this is performed by the attacker. So this also is like from our side only. Nothing is from attacker side. He will simply sit and he will lure the user to visit some website. From that website, he will try to enter into our system, and from there he will try to take the control of our system. Okay. So if you see here, initially attacker will try to keep a trap. So here the trap is nothing but he will try to compromise one website. Inside that website, he will try to keep some malware. So let us say in my website, I have a page called login.php. So inside the login.php page, he will also add his own code, malicious code, right? So whenever a genuine user, whenever a genuine user accesses that compromised website, he will be able to download that original login page plus malware code also. But how this genuine user will visit that website? There comes the attacker's role. Attacker will send some spam messages or emails saying that you click on this link to get some benefit, or you click on the attachment to get some benefit. So immediately the unknown legitimate users, what they'll do, innocent and legitimate users, they'll simply click on the link or open the attachment. Immediately what will happen? It will take him to the compromised website, right? So he is the user, has received some spam SMS or email from the attacker. They have clicked or visited that attachment. Immediately they are being redirected to a compromised website. What will happen now? User downloads a malware or attacker exploit the vulnerability with the user's end, right? Immediately he is downloading some malware into the user system. What is happening in the third step? Malware will get unpacked and it will get executed, right? Once the malware is unpacked and executed, it will try to analyze the entire system. What kind of analysis it will do? It will try to do what is the operating system running in this, and what applications are installed in this system, what are their versions. Are you running Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows Vista, Windows 10? Which version of Windows you are running? Inside that also we will be having so many builds. Which build you are running? And if you have Adobe Acrobat Reader, which version of Adobe Acrobat Reader you are using? Like that, every detailed information of your system, which we call it as fingerprint of the system. So that will be collected, and that information will be sent to this attacker's server. So this attacker's server, we call it as a CNC server, which is nothing but command and control server. Okay, so that information will be sent to the CNC server. Immediately CNC server, what it will do, it will analyze that information, and if any of your software or operating system is having some known vulnerabilities, it will try to send the malware code or exploit code to exploit that known vulnerability, right? So once that known malware or exploit is completed, what will happen now? He gets a remote shell from your system. Now using that remote shell, he will try to download a public key, and that public key will be transferred to your system. Using that public key, now he will encrypt all your files. Okay, so here we are using public private key pair for encryption and decryption. So he will be maintaining a separate server for maintaining these keys. One public key will be retrieved from here, and that will be sent to the user's system. In fifth phase or step, what he is doing, files will get encrypted using this public key, and he will send a notification to transfer some ransom. Okay, so using that what you call public key, he is encrypting here. So how can we decrypt that file? Only by using the combination of that public key, which we know it as private key. So the private key is only known to the attacker, right? So it is asking for the ransom. Whenever the user transfers the ransom in terms of either bitcoins or normal payment, immediately what he will do, he will retrieve the corresponding private key which is used for the decryption, and that will be sent to the user's system, and it will try to decrypt all the encrypted files. Okay, so this is what the anatomy of ransomware, and the ransom messages, whatever is shown by the attacker, is similar to this. There are so many applications of this ransom. So different types of messages we can see. So the server will destroy the key within 72 hours after encryption is completed, right? So he is displaying like this. So to retrieve the private key, you need to pay 0.5 bitcoins. So in the current day scenario, the cost of one bitcoin is $40,000, I think. It is around some 15 lakhs, I feel. Not exactly, but around some 15 lakhs. So half of that 15 lakhs is nothing but almost 7.5 lakhs you need to pay to get the private key. Only after that he will send you the private key. But this is another way of displaying the ransom message. But what is the guarantee that after decryption, he may give this information to another attacker, or he himself tries to encrypt the files again, right? So that is not guaranteed, right? He may use again this same ransomware attack on you, and he may take the control of your system, encrypt the files, and ask for the ransom. So most of the times, if the information in your system is not that much sensitive or confidential, you don't pay the ransom. Just to format your system and update all the softwares to the latest ones, right? And don't click on any of the links, unknown links and email attachments which are not known to you, right? That is the only possible way we can do. If we have some confidential project or confidential files in your system without which you may lose some crores of money, in that case, we don't have any choice. You need to pay the ransom and get the private key and then decrypt it. At least after decryption, immediately disconnect it from the internet and try to take the backup of all those files and format the system, right? So this is with respect to the layman, but how internally it is trying to do. So I'll try to just give you an overview of software wise how this ransomware is getting injected into the software or application. That I'll just give a glimpse, not going into the technical details. So the normal non-malicious website browsing pattern is like this. Whenever a user, this blue color one is the normal user and this gray color one is the website owner. So user is searching for some website and website owner is sending some login page in terms of zeros and ones through the internet. Whenever it is received, what will happen now? This received code will get executed at the user's system and it will get rendered and displayed to the user's browser. This is the normal procedure. And what is the malicious procedure? What is happening here? Already this website is compromised, right? This is what previously we discussed. Attacker has compromised one website and injected some malicious code inside that website. Now the innocent user, he has visited this compromised website. What will happen now? In the response, he will get the normal web page in addition with the malicious code, right? So after receiving, he will try to render the code in the browser and also try to execute the malware code. Once the malware code is executed, what it will do, attack code is processed. It uses information about the victim's computer. It will try to fingerprint your system and it will try to download the suitable exploits from the server, right? It will try to collect the information about victim's computer to select suitable exploits from a pool of possible exploits. And after collecting the information, what will happen? Attack code directs the browser to process the selected exploit code. When a vulnerability is successfully exploited, malicious code is installed on the user's computer. So now here what we are doing, the suitable exploits are downloaded and those exploits are getting executed and exploiting your system, right? And malicious code is being installed on your computer. Now your computer is compromised. Now the attacker can do anything with respect to your system. This is the malicious process how the systems are getting compromised. Okay, so this is the overall flow of the infection. So initially user has visited a buggy website where a malware is injected, hidden redirection is injected. Okay, so now this is the landing page which is hosted on some web server which will try to send the exploit payload. Now it will try to send the exploit payload and the payload will be downloaded and executed on user's system. Once it is downloaded and executed on user system, what will happen? It will return the shell access. Shell is nothing but command prompt. where attacker can execute some commands. So returns the shell access and listens for attacker's commands. Okay, so this is the overall flow of this infection. So how the code is used to redirect the user to this compromised website. Generally, we'll be having in the HTML tags, there is a tag called iframe, where they will be giving the compromised website link here. And if you see here, width and height is 1 and visibility is hidden. That means they are trying to redirect the user to this PHP file, but it will not be visible to the user because of this hidden visibility. Right? This is one of the coding tactic. They are making it as hidden, but they are able to load the malware, redirect the user to this website. Okay? And once the attack code is downloaded, it will be like this. Now here the malware code, entire malware code is encoded. It is not in plain text. If it is in the plain text, what will happen? Your antivirus or firewall or IDS, IPS, all these things will be able to detect that as a malicious thing. Because of that reason, what they are doing, they are trying to encode the malicious code. So because of that reason, it is in form of some special characters, numbers, right? So it will not be able to understandable to the antivirus solutions. So they will not be able to detect this, right? So this is the landing page code or malicious payload, whatever is used by the attacker. Once it is downloaded onto your system, it will automatically decode and it will get executed, which will compromise your system. Okay, so this is very simple ransomware attack, which is happened. The name of the attack is buggy ransomware via Apache's black hole exploit. You can simply type this name in the internet, you will get more details. And the analysis of attack is this thing. They are trying to redirect the user to this web page using this hidden behavior. And from there, they are trying to download this malware payload, which will get downloaded and decrypted, and it will get installed, executed and installed on the user system. Right? So when we think of any malware, what would be the major entry points of malware? So there will be majorly 3 entry points. First one is the installed applications in the system. So if any one of the application is having some vulnerability, it may lead to your system compromise, right? That is the first entry point. And second entry point is through portable storage devices. This is like our pen drives, hard disks and all. Generally what we'll do, we'll try to keep the pen drive in our home PC where there are no licensed softwares are there, no antivirus is there and all. Assume that it has some virus in your home PC. You have connected your pen drive to that, and the same pen drive you have carried to your organization or enterprise, and here you are connecting the same pen drive to your system. What will happen now? That the same virus or malware will enter into your organization system, and using the LAN network, it will try to penetrate into entire network or systems. Right? That is the second entry point of malware. And third entry point is web browser. How it is through web browser? Whenever you are visiting a compromised website, it will try to download the malware in addition with the actual web page. That is what till now we have seen. So these are the 3 major entry points of malware which may leave your system as compromised. So other than this, in the initial slides, we were discussing about one thing which is not known today, but tomorrow it might be discovered by any other person. Such kind of vulnerabilities are called as zero-day vulnerabilities or zero-day malware. So what this refers to? Zero-day vulnerability refers to a weakness or hole or vulnerability in the software that is unknown to the vendor, that is not known to anybody till now, right? But tomorrow it might be discovered by anybody else. So this security hole is exploited by hackers before the vendor becomes aware and fix it, right? So there are so many incidents happened because of the zero-day attacks. So these are the some of the statistics of first half of 2020. All major companies are having some of the zero-day vulnerabilities. Apple is having 2, Facebook 1, Google 3, Microsoft is having 11, Mozilla 2, Trend Micro 1. Like that, majority of the companies are having this zero-day malware, right? Which the owners of the software don't know about that weakness in the system, but it has been discovered by either a genuine researcher or malicious attacker. If it is a genuine researcher, no problem for us. He will just report us to fix it. If it is by an attacker, he will try to use that as a medium to make some money out of it. Right? Very dangerous. So, for addressing all these things, we should have some updated anti-malware solutions. Now, whenever we think of this antivirus or anti-malware, majority of the companies will maintain the signature based anti-malware solutions. I'll simply explain in normal terms. Signature based is nothing but whenever there is a virus has entered into the market, immediately what that virus is doing in your system, whether it is deleting a file or changing some system settings or installing some other application, these kind of operations will be collected and they will make it as a signature of that virus. Okay, so in that fashion, every virus will have its own behavior, what it is doing in the system. That we call it as its own signature. So like that, for every virus, a signature will be created, and all these signatures will be maintained by the antivirus databases. Right? So if today there is a virus, immediately the virus related signature will be captured and that will be updated in all antivirus solutions, which will get updated to the users. Okay, so that is signature based. Until and unless we get the update from the vendor, antivirus vendor, that new virus will not get detected by our existing antivirus. Right? That is the limitation. So if today I have a virus detected in the market and I don't have any antivirus system which is detecting that, so the same virus has affected my system. Even though I have a licensed antivirus solution, I will not be able to protect against that new virus, because they also don't know what is the pattern of that virus or signature of the virus, and their database is not updated with that new virus signature, so it will not be able to detect that virus in the system. So these are not completely secure. So because of that reason, what we are doing, we are going for heuristic based. So rather than capturing the behavior of each virus, building it as a signature, updating the databases, releasing the update to the users, rather than all these things, why can't we build a set of rules which are generic behavior of the system? So it is like whenever any virus is infected or infected to our system, it may try to delete some file in the system files or modify some of the registries or modify some of the system files. Now, why can't we target that operations directly? Now, whenever we say heuristic, we'll take one rule saying that, okay, this registry key cannot be modified by any program, right? If it is a virus will be infected into a program or application. Now that application will try to modify or delete this registry keys. Now, as part of my heuristic rule, I would keep a rule saying that registry keys cannot be accessed or modified or deleted by a program. Now, whenever a virus is infected to a program and if the program is trying to modify the registry key, immediately this heuristic rules will come into picture and they will try to block the operation. Right? So even though that is a new virus, operation will be blocked, but not the virus. Right? So first of all, we need to analyze what are all the possible malicious operations performed in our system. All those malicious operations needs to be created as a heuristic rule, and that rules needs to be enforced for system execution. Okay, so this addresses zero-day malware also. Even though I don't know what is the exact behavior of virus, I know what are the operations I should not allow. If that new virus is performing that operation, anyway, this heuristic rule will not allow. So that kind of heuristic engines we need to build. So almost many of the major antivirus solutions are having combination of both now, signature based as well as heuristic based, right? So because of this reason, signature based will be trying to stop the known malware. Heuristic based solution will try to stop the even unknown malware also. It is purely based on the behavior of your operation. It is not based on the known virus or unknown virus. That is what the heuristic means. So the mitigations to zero-day malware is first thing, you have to whitelist your system applications. What are applications you would like to run? Why? Because sometimes the malware code will be downloaded onto your system and it will try to run that downloaded file. Right? So if you are enforcing some whitelist of applications or programs, now that new file will not be the part of your whitelist, so your system will not allow it to run. So you can secure against the downloaded malware code. And second thing is go for heuristic anti-malware solutions. Just now we discussed about this. And update your browser software and antivirus regularly, and do not visit any reported attack websites. So Google will be having one service called reported attack websites. So if anybody reports saying that this website is compromised, immediately Google will try to analyze that website and it will keep that website's URL in the database of compromised websites. Now, if any other person is trying to visit the same web page, immediately Google will give us, it is in the list of reported attack websites. Do you want to still access this? Like that, it will give us the warning. So if any of the for any of the web pages, if Google is saying like that, better not to go ahead, right? Because that is reported already by someone else as it is a compromised or attack website. So this is one of the web proxy editor where previously I told you like attacker can change the network network configuration to change the proxy and keep his own system as the proxy, right? So the same thing is depicted here. From the web browser, whatever you are browsing, that will go to the attacker's proxy. Inside the proxy, he can see all the communication, whatever is going on, which URL you are trying to access, what parameters you are passing, username, password, all those parameters he can see here. And he can either forward to the actual web server or he can deny here itself. And the server also responds to the same attacker's proxy. Again, he can do anything, modify something or just monitor the activities and then forward it to the web browser. Like this, intercept the traffic between browser and the web server, right? If your system is compromised, the attacker can change your network settings, configure a proxy to get control of all your traffic, right? Yeah. So I hope it has given you basic idea about what is a malware and all. So with this, I would like to conclude my session. So if there are any queries, we'll discuss now.